21 years ago, as the Clinton impeachment trial approached, I was no longer working in the Senate, but I still frequently stopped by to visit my former boss, Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan. He was a world-class scholar, a former Harvard professor who was absolutely sure he was going to find the Holy Grail in his month of impeachment research before the Senate trial. The Holy Grail was, of course, the meaning of the words high crimes and misdemeanors. After his month of study, Senator Moynihan presented the results of his research to me in a one-sentence interpretation of the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors. Senator Moynihan said, "It means whatever we say it means." And then, after a dramatic pause, he added the proof when he said, "Because there is no judicial review." Senator Moynihan's eyes danced with a scholar's joy in finding the answer, and his voice sank with a lawmaker's disappointment in the vagueness of that answer. Almost every phrase in the Constitution is subject to review by the Supreme Court as to its meaning, but the language of the impeachment clause is not subject to review by the Supreme Court. If a president is convicted by a two-thirds vote in the Senate, the convicted president cannot appeal the case to the Supreme Court. There is no appeal process for impeachment convictions. No judicial review. The Senate is the Supreme Court of impeachments. So the meaning of the words high crimes and misdemeanors is entirely up to the Senate, meaning each individual senator. There was no real fact defense of Bill Clinton when he was on trial in the Senate for perjury, as we mentioned earlier in this hour. Bill Clinton did indeed commit perjury. He publicly confessed to committing perjury. That was enough for 45 senators to vote to remove him from office. But 55 senators believed that this particular perjury was not about something serious enough to fit their definition of high crimes and misdemeanors. And they were all correct, because the Constitution deliberately leaves it completely up to senators to decide how they personally interpret the phrase high crimes and misdemeanors. Because the verdict of a Senate impeachment trial cannot be appealed, the reality is a president can be impeached for anything or not impeached for anything. That is the reality. Why didn't the founders give the Senate more specific guidance on this important issue? Because they didn't think the Senate would need that guidance. Remember, the founders' notion of who senators would be. They would all be white, they would all be wise, they would all be educated, they'd all be aristocratic, and they would all be men. Men who would never have to lower themselves to publicly campaigning for office because their names would never even appear on a ballot. The founders did not allow voters to vote for United States senators. Senators were appointed by state legislatures. The founders did everything they could think of to isolate senators from politics. 6-year terms, no campaigning for office, but the founders would not recognize today's United States Senate. And they would not respect how today's senators won their seats in the United States Senate. And the founders definitely would never entrust today's senators with defining what is impeachable and what is not. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.